While it seems like everything is getting worse, kids shows have entered into a new golden age, and these past couple of years, the story, art, characters, and animation have reached entirely new heights. Coupled with the ability to watch any show from across the globe means it's never been a better time to be a kid. Looking back at the history of kids programming, access and choice was very limited. Heck, even back when Looney Tunes were all the rage, those were shown in theaters before adult movies, meaning kids weren't even the target demographic. Except for maybe like creepy puppet shows and nightmare-inducing fairy tales from the Middle Ages, children really didn't get access to dedicated media until Saturday morning cartoons in the 70s and 80s, and even those were more toy commercials than anything else. Millennials were blessed to have entire channels devoted to kids' cartoons, with the main channels being Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, the Disney Channel, and PBS Kids for when you went to your grandmother's house. And the spirit of Saturday morning cartoons was kept alive with Kids WB. And I am not dissing these channels. This was my childhood and I loved every minute of it. But it's interesting how the majority of kid shows in the 90s and early 2000s were flat out comedies. While I laughed my ass off, there was rarely ever thought-provoking content. The deepest shows were probably Courage the Cowardly Dog, Avatar: The Last Airbender, and Hey Arnold. But the rest was, well, garbage that probably contributed to our parents' chronic migraines. Cartoons started changing around 2007. While the focus remained on humor, characters started having larger goals and missions. Take a look at Chowder, who worked to become a great chef. Flapjack from the Misadventures of Flapjack, who had this unshakable moral compass. Or Phineas and Ferb that always worked to bring the community together. These characters instill a much more wholesome message than, say, Johnny Bravo or the Rugrats, whose parents probably should have had CPS called on them multiple times. But the world of kids' cartoons would be forever changed in 2010 with the release of Adventure Time. Finn was nice, heroic, thoughtful, but still acted like a kid. He was someone that children could not only identify with, but look up to. Besides Avatar: The Last Airbender, there was never a show like Adventure Time in the West where characters actually grew throughout the series, which is why it ran for 10 seasons. And Adventure Time's success didn't go unnoticed. Other shows began following suit, such as Gravity Falls and Steven Universe. And now this trend continues into the age of streaming. Streaming's greatest strength is that kid shows are no longer forced to fit within 30-minute time slots so advertisers can sell toys. Episodes can run as long as needed to organically tell their story, meaning writers dictate the pace of the show, not advertisers. Plus, streaming allows shows to focus on a series-long arc opposed to an individual episodic structure. Shows like Dexter's Lab didn't have this definite start that needed to be seen in order to understand the context of the series. Each segment was its own self-contained story, which was almost a necessity before viewers had the power to pick what episodes to watch. If kid shows lean too heavily into having an ongoing story, missing just one episode could leave you lost. Remember how frustrating missing a single Dragon Ball Z episode was? Some of the best examples of this include Camp Cretaceous, Maya and the Three, and the Tales of Arcadia saga. These shows tell much deeper stories since past episodes build upon each other. This in turn increases the stakes. When kid shows have self-contained stories, there isn't that much room for some grand conflict. Unlike Maya and the Three, where the gang tries to defeat the literal god of death, Tales of Arcadia, which is a multi-series adventure involving different factions working to save humanity against evil trolls, or Camp Cretaceous, where the kids try not to get eaten by dinosaurs. Completely relatable. These obstacles are way greater than anything found in regular show, Fairly Odd Parents, Kids Next Door combined. The characters in kids shows today work together to overcome a series-long challenge with strengthened and fray relationships throughout the series. Everyone has incredible development. Just look how much Ben changes in Camp Cretaceous. Unlike in SpongeBob, where SpongeBob and Squidward can spend a heartfelt day together one episode and then go back to business as usual the next. An episodic structure just cheapens the overall story. Kid shows today treat their audience like adults by not dumbing down the content. They respect kids and their intelligence by delivering these much more complex concepts. Plus, any kid show with a body count is an A+ in my book. Gotta love it. And there doesn't need to be some deep multi-episode story to showcase incredible characters. The kids show Bluey is praised for its empathetic portrayal of characters without being annoying. The art and animation of kid shows are leaps and bounds better today, and we're not even going to touch on 3D animated shows. Honestly, early 3D animated shows 20 years ago looked like they were ripped right out of a horror movie. But when it comes to 2D animated shows, the only thing that might come close is the old Acme Looney Tunes and maybe the Animaniacs. But the vast majority of older animated shows don't hold a candle next to contemporary shows. That's mostly thanks to how shows were animated 20 plus years ago. With today's technology, artists are able to draw, color, and create scenes all at once, where in the past, all of this was done separately. An artist would paint a background, and then an animator would work out the rough animation using tons of paper. Then an inker would carefully outline and paint the hundreds of thousands of individual drawings on translucent plasticky paper called cells. These cells would be meticulously placed over top the background, and then a picture would be taken. Repeat that 24 more times and boom, you got about a second of animation. This process made even making tiny, subtle changes an arduous task. If you wanted to, say, change the background so a barrel or something was in a different position, you couldn't just select that layer and move it to the right. The entire background had to be redone. It's the reason why individual animators on YouTube are creating more impressive cartoons than what an entire team could produce 40 years ago. Animators just have a ton more resources to produce shows. They have technology to create backgrounds and animations that were only possible for full-length feature films 30 years ago. But what's most impressive to me isn't just the animations, it's the backgrounds and colors. A lot of older cartoons did a great job of creating the illusion of a lush forest or a bustling city, but they're largely empty. They didn't have the time or resources to populate the backgrounds with people, cars, or even detailed buildings. But again, thanks to digital art, backgrounds began having just as much, if not more, personality than the characters. I can go on and on about just this aspect of kid shows alone, so it might be best to save it for another video. And finally, thanks to streaming, kids have access to a bunch of different types of media from all across the world, and this is evident with the rise of anime's popularity. This is great because it exposes kids to a wide range of ideas and cultures. When networks controlled programming, they controlled culture. A lot of Western shows share a similar tone. That's why having content available from all around the world is so refreshing. Yes, anime did reach Western audiences in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, but it was the most mainstream of mainstream anime. Dragon Ball, Sailor Moon, Naruto, you get it. It was shows that were picked for us, but now kids have so many options to broaden their horizons. One of the only things that don't seem better nowadays is the humor, and there is no way that's just the bias of a 30-year-old man comparing modern kid shows to that of his youth. Yeah, it can't be that. If you still think that kids shows from yesteryear outshine contemporary options, well, good news. The majority of older shows are still readily available. Kids have decades of content to discover and fall in love with.